Alrighty, welcome to the UTS Finance Society Podcast, Finance Unplugged. Today we will be discussing and understanding how finance is showed on the big screen, and we'll be looking at one of the most famous movies, an actual Oscar-winning award movie directed by Adam McKay with a star-studded cast, based on the global financial crisis, The Big Short. So with that, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whenever you're listening to this podcast. Welcome to the third episode of the new UTS Finance Society Podcast, Finance Unplugged. I'm your host, Alicia, and next to me is my amazing co-host, Isabella.
Welcome to this podcast where we talk about informative, entertaining, and bite-sized financial information for your professional use, but also mostly because it's just to help us understand finance ourselves.
Hell yeah. Alright, so we have a couple of headlines in finance today. Hey guys, so we know that the news can constantly change, which is why we're just giving you a bit of a pre-warning with this week's episode. Financial headlines are from the 20th of March. But no stress, keep enjoying the podcast as listening to the Finance Unplugged. Obviously, with the Iranian war still going on, Middle East conflict has been causing oil prices to surge. $3 a litre in some areas?
Yep, some areas are actually out of fuel too.
No way! I can't fathom that. Like, how is your fuel prices going around your area?
It's $2.30 a litre now.
$2.30?
Yeah.
I definitely range between that $2.20 to like about $2.50 to $2.60.
Yeah, it jumps, I feel like.
Yeah, I fear for what it would be like in the east, or even like the inner west.
I am from the east.
Oh. How is it $2.30?
It's not that bad so far.
Really?
But maybe I don't drive enough to see the
To,
massive jumps yet.
Yeah, you don't drive around and go, oh, that's $2.50, can't go
No.
there.
Half the time I'm driving, I'm not looking at the prices. I'm like, when it gets to that point where I need to, look at it, that's when I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm too busy blasting your favourite music artist.
Oh no, just ignorance is bliss. That's my life motto.
Oh dear. As well, we've got the RBA hiking that cash rate up to 4.1%. As well, obviously, up being 25 basis points from last month.
Yep.
Our investors are facing losses of roughly $250 billion off the ASX from a tax on oil and gas facilities, leading to miners offsetting gains in the International Energy Agency now releasing 400 million barrels of reserve oil. That's definitely will be an interesting way and how they actually section that out. We've also got the Swiss National Bank, the Swiss National Bank, sorry everyone, have held rates steady and amid global instability. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can't fathom that as well. And as well, we've got our Australian house prices are stable in major cities, but affordability has reached to all-time record lows. So, not the greatest things happening right now.
Not for us, especially as young people who, want to buy a house one day, right?
Yeah, but that's okay. We got to be positive. Invest early, invest often.
Yes, literally. That's the advice of today's episode.
Yes, it will definitely be the advice. Or maybe the forewarning for today's episode. Alright, so, finance on the silver screen. Isabella, I asked you, I'm like, go, we've got to look at some movies. Because it's very interesting to see how aspects of life are made into movies. I mean, we've got tons of war movies. We've got, what other movies? There's a lot of,
historical ones.
Yes, historical ones.
Period dramas and all of that.
Yes. But definitely one of the biggest ones that I feel like have a lot of untapped energy is movies based around finance. And definitely the biggest one, I mean, definitely growing up when I was going around, was learning about The Big Short. So, you had the opportunity to watch some of it.
Yes, I did. It was actually really insightful.
Yeah.
I technically grew up probably a little bit after this happened. So, for me, this was not a thing I even knew about.
Yeah.
I only knew about it because I studied economics and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
True enough.
So, yeah, it was really interesting. I love the way they explained it, at least up to where I'm currently in the movie.
I must ask, where did you stop?
I'm about halfway, literally just halfway. And I just have the last half to finish. But, exams get in the way, so.
That is fair. Where did we stop off at? What was happening? Because I've watched this movie thousands of times.
Really?
It's definitely a favourite of mine.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I can see myself watching this again, like, honestly, and maybe in the future if I ever have kids, I will totally force them to watch this.
I know, 100%. I was talking to my partner last night. I'm like, babes, come on, watch it. He's like, I don't want to watch it because I'll just feel stupid. I'm like, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm
It
here.
also explained in the movie too.
I know. It's very different, but, you know, he'll get there eventually.
All I remember is the last note I literally made a very important note about was all about that collateralized debt obligation, and I found that so interesting because my finance courses never covered that far.
Yeah, so CDOs.
That was something that I found really intriguing, and I was interested in learning more from it.
Yes, well, we're going to be getting into that right now. So, to all those people of you listening right now, if you haven't watched The Big Short, you need to do it now. But to all those who have or didn't really understand it, no. Here is where you'll get the gist. So, The Big Short explains how the global financial crisis actually occurred. We actually follow the lives of the people who saw the trends, how they made the biggest bet against the American economy, and basically the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the US have always seen themselves as this big superpower in, being this, this bank of money and, reaching the highest of highs and, job security and everything. Mm-hmm. But this was definitely a time that said, no, you are not the biggest and greatest, and you can't outrun financial ruin, unfortunately.
I don't think anyone can, to be fair.
No, 100%. But, so, with our main story, we follow a couple of people who either have found the bubble back all the way in 2006. We've got Michael Burry, played by Christian Bale.
Yep.
And we also have a couple of other characters in the play who actually shorted. I mean, Michael Burry did short a lot of mortgage-backed securities. Mm-hmm. But also people finding out throughout the way of the trickling of information. We've got Ryan Gosling, Steve Carell, Jeremy Strong. I always forget some of the other actors' names, but they've been in a lot of other things. I can't remember. But they're definitely a couple of ones who short against the MBSs, which were BBB rated, and even some that were actual AAA rated as well. But before we get into the story, to all of you who are non-financial people and just want a way to find out how does finance actually work, what's involved in this, we are going to go over a couple of financial terms for you. So, look, unfortunately, we're not Margot Robbie in a bubble bath with champagne. If only. But we'll do our best.
Yeah.
So, the first thing we learn about are mortgage-backed securities. So, they're basically investment instruments that pool various mortgage loans purchased from investors. And the way it works and how it's structured is it follows that the banks, who are the lenders, will sell loans to intermediaries, whoever this middleman will be, X, Y, Z. These people then package it into special purpose vehicles, also known as SPVs, and then sell them to investors. Now, the reason why we talk about mortgage-backed securities within the global financial crisis is because it was the credit ratings and what was in those tranches that was what was making this whole crisis come to this explosion. Yep. So we've got our MBSs. They get rated by credit rating agencies, and they're based on how risky they are. So as finance students, we all know AAA means gold standard.
Yeah.
Super amazing, yeah?
It's the best one.
Yeah. And then it obviously goes down to A, BBB, shebang.
All the way to the bottom.
Yeah, which is a D, a default, which you definitely don't want. And this is all based on Moody and S&P's ratings. So, with our AAAs, it's a very good, low possibility of default, usually low risk. Another thing we do need to learn about, which we do find out in the movie, is that we weigh up all the investors who identified that the housing market was a building propped up on rickety sticks, was that they used credit default swaps to actually short against the market. So, credit default swaps, also known as CDSs, is a form of insurance for investors to swap or offset their credit risk. Basically, the investor who is buying the swaps is protected if the seller defaults and vice versa. So, you know how Christian Bale kind of goes to Goldman Sachs and says, I want X amount of CDSs?
Yes, I recall that.
Yes, and they basically laugh him out of the room.
It's a very interesting scene.
I know. It definitely, it is very impressionable. It definitely shows you the culture that was definitely around the banks and definitely the heads around thinking that, they're all good. They've got their money. They're all secure. No one is defaulting, which was such a lie by the end of it as well. And then obviously another great concept the movie explains, which you actually did mention, when you get a little bit later on into the movie about the blackjack table and Selena Gomez. is about CDOs. So CDOs are pools of various debt assets, such as bonds, mortgages, and loans, and they repackage them into tranches, basically AA. Now, during the global financial crisis, these CDOs were actually made up of subprime mortgages, which basically, and as Margot Robbie definitely said it well, they're basically made of shit. Unfortunately, there were just shit fucking bonds and mortgage bonds in them. But they were considered to be safe and highly rated investments. But they definitely did come in a more riskier cost, and usually when borrowers were defaulting. So, now that we've got all these pesky financial terms out of the way, here we get into the good stuff of what actually happened. Okay, so you watched the first half of the movie.
Yes.
Do you want to do a quick summary for me on how you felt? What did you grasp?
Honestly, I kind of just learned a lot about the GFC in general and like the lead up to it, because obviously in economics sometimes you do study like the historical moments, but mostly you focus on the after effects and then future implications. At least that's what I've been taught thus far.
Yeah.
So there was not really a lot in terms of like where all of this kind of started, so I found it really interesting to like learn about the mortgages, especially like the MBS, so the mortgage-backed securities you mentioned earlier, but more specifically how they had extremely risky subprime adjustable rate loans.
Yeah.
I actually did not know that. That was not something ever taught to me, which is kind of shocking now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously the whole like credit default swap stuff, that wasn't taught technically in the economics courses. So this is basically meant to act like a solvency for the bank. And that's what I really learned so far. And then I learned the collateralized debt obligation stuff, which is really interesting because definitely would not have imagined a bank actually doing that in the first place.
Yeah, they did some shady stuff, unfortunately. But yes, no, so you are very right. And what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of comment a little bit on the things that happen within this movie. So, we start off in 2006 with Michael Burry, who's played by Christian Bale, who basically asked one of his assistants to go over the top 20 mortgage-backed securities in everything. In every mortgage-backed security tranche that has been bought by a bank and organized, and basically has been ignored by Wall Street.
Yeah.
So as he was obviously going through, he found that a lot of these mortgage-backed securities actually had loans that were defaulting. They had people who were not paying monthly repayments on time, 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late. I mean, when you see that, I think even just as general students, when we hear that, like, what do you think? I know what I would think, but what would you think?
I'm honestly thinking, like, what's going on so badly that the budget is not budgeting properly?
Yeah, true enough. No, that's definitely fair. Definitely what's going on with budgeting, but also who are these people that banks are loaning money to? Because I think definitely nowadays we talk about and we really highlight really heavily in finance about your character, your credit, sort of your behavior and how that makes you a good investor, or even just like having a good credit rating and wanting to get a loan definitely can really impact your chances, or even being blacklisted.
Oh yeah, that is just a whole different story.
That is a whole different story, which we should definitely get into at another episode.
Another episode. We should put that down.
Yes. But being blacklisted as well can definitely impact your chances of ever applying for a loan, whether that's personal or for a home or for a business. So, getting back to the movie, we also have Michael Burry, talking about it. He's running a hedge fund in California, and obviously he's got his investors who find out what he's been thinking of, what he does, and he ends up obviously going to the banks and basically gets laughed out.
Yeah.
Of all these banks thinking, oh, we've got a stupid investor. He's bought all these mortgage-backed securities and he wants to short them.
Which is insane to them at the time.
Yes, it was, but not 2 to 3 years later. So that's our Michael Burry line. Then we've got our Ryan Gosling line, who's this crazy enigmatic trader from Deutsche Bank, who actually identifies as well that the housing market is an asset bubble. And he kind of follows around Michael Burry's talkings, and there had been packs made, like pitch decks and everything.
I know, there's a lot of those.
Yes, that had kind of been floating around, and he kind of just makes this assumption, so the market's going to collapse, might as well short it. He actually brings this idea to the hedge fund called Front Point, which is run by Steve Carell and a couple of other guys, about the subprime bonds. So they equally also end up shorting the market on MBSs and later on in the movie, the CDOs, which I don't think a lot of people did. I think they were the only hedge fund that kind of found out about the CDOs.
Okay.
Yes, which is insane because CDOs are just bad subprime bonds and mortgage-backed securities and loans that were terrible, wrapped up in something completely different, relabeled and re-rated to make it sound like it's super nice and super interesting and not super risky. But if you get further on into the movie, which is where the blackjack scene happens with Selena Gomez, the CDOs can then turn into synthetic CDOs, which is a bet on the bet. It's like a bet on a bet. I know, it's crazy. They explain it a lot better in the movies. But it's this whole, it definitely becomes this driving factor within the global financial crisis that all these people had better money and put money into various different tranches that had been packaged into new CDOs, that it all basically collapses and all this money just disappears, which no one kind of really realized was happening at the time until much later. So obviously, after all of that, there's a whole bunch of other things that happen within the movie. A couple of other up-and-coming hedge funders, end up also finding out about the MBSs, and I always forget their names. I actually really might Google them. In The Big Short, they run it's like a hedge fund from Colorado, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, their names are Charlie and someone else. What's their names? Oh, Charlie and Jamie. So these two up-and-coming Colorado...
oh, wait, they were the ones that were in a lobby or something, and they had a meeting with some guy called Chris, right?
Yes.
Oh,
and they basically equally also get laughed at because...
I recall that scene. And
yes.
I had no idea what was going on because there was too much jargon going on.
Yeah.
But, if I knew...
So, yes. So, to put that plainly, they had wanted to start their new hedge fund underneath Deutsche Bank, which is kind of like what Fort Point was doing, the Steve Carell character, because they were actually under Morgan Stanley.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so they had their hedge fund level. They wanted to have another hedge fund level in Deutsche Bank, but they got laughed at because they actually needed a certain X amount of money, and they didn't have that. But they ended up finding out that there was this market analysis of the mortgage-backed securities being basically full of subprimes. And then they obviously took that to their advantage. But they were one of the only few that had actually thought of the idea of actually shorting the AAA and the AA mortgage-backed security packages.
Oh, wow.
Yes, everyone did a lot of the BBB, the double B, kind of the mid-level kind of tier mortgage-backed securities. They were the only ones who took the top dollar AAAs, because if all those kind of bonds were bad, then surely the AA and AAA would have to be full of other bad subprimes as well.
Okay, that's an interesting take on it too.
I know, and definitely much riskier in comparison to what a couple of other people had done. So it all kind of comes to this boiling point of it's about September 2008, and it's all coming to a head. We then obviously find out that, people have been lying and, manipulating things. I mean, a couple of the guys from the hedge fund at Front Point even end up going so far as to question the rating agencies and the credibility in rating the tranches correctly. When I saw that scene, I legit felt my heart drop, when I had first watched it.
Oh, wow.
Because, it's that bad and intense. Because the fact is that these rating agencies were just lying and, helping the banks and covering up things just so they could get their fee and their income. Because if they didn't lie for the banks, those banks would then move on to competitors, so S&P and Moody, which was so insane that obviously your own volition to want to have a fee and to have your client kind of still be happy with you is to lie, in the sense of then
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
How do you expect to keep their trust, especially when it's something like money?
Yeah. Well, and then how do you keep your clients happy as well? But then how did the banks do that to ordinary people?
I have no idea. Seems like the 2000s period was a whole different kind of time period that we're not used to now.
No. Oh, it was crazy. So then obviously our movie comes to a head by 2008. The effects of the banks, relaxed practices of selling loans to clients with bad credit, years of subprime mortgage-backed securities, CDOs, and the false rating of rating agencies have obviously caught up to Wall Street. It all comes to a head when Bear Stearns, a very old bank, have been saying that, oh no, we're great, we've still got money.
Mm-hmm.
There was a certain day that their stocks were consistently dropping from $38 to down to like $23. It was a free-for-all moment.
Okay.
There was not a lot of trust in the system that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, many of the banks that had been really big players for decades had been reduced to filing for bankruptcy, seeking financial support from the government, being seized or acquired, such as Bear Stearns, Washington Mutual, Northern Rock, and the most pivotal one of them all, the Lehman Brothers. Which I didn't realize was a very big thing, but apparently in the financial world, it was a very big thing.
Okay.
Yes, it definitely rung a few alarm bells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, after hearing all this, how do you feel with the global financial crisis?
I'm so glad I was too young to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
Really. But I don't know, a part of me low-key wants to go back in time just to see how this all played out, like in real time. I know the movie is kind of like a fictionalized version of it, but I want to see how people are reacting, like truthfully. Like, what was their thought of this whole like economic crisis, or financial crisis really, that was going on, and how were they actually going to respond? Because they wouldn't have known what we know now, obviously living in the future of this.
Yeah.
But they technically would have experienced, well, more or less, experienced something similar, I guess, with the Asian financial crisis, to the point that they should have had some sort of knowledge.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I just think people were just naive and became goldfishes and were just like, no, we're fine.
Maybe.
I think that was a bit of the mentality. But I think as well, no one had seen a financial crisis impact such a big superpower, a big financial superpower being the US as well. Which was really insane because obviously lots of people had suffered. I mean, lots of employees were laid off. People who had loans, and even though they may have been defaulting, were homeless. People couldn't afford actual houses.
That's so sad.
I know, this concept of the American dream had basically diminished within a few months. And not to say that, like, I did grow up in it. I actually lived in New York during the global financial crisis. So I was like 4 years old when it was happening, so I was very young, but anecdotally, my dad used to tell me, and definitely nowadays, he was like, oh yeah, like being in New York in 2008 was scary because if you were in a suit, everyone just, looked at you very badly, and you were a banker and you were evil.
Wow.
You were just this
crazy.
This evil entity that stolen people's money, which for him wasn't true. He was an Australian who was working at QBE in insurance. So, like, I mean, I get it, but, like, to have this whole kind of mentality, and for a whole population to have this mentality of feeling they had been stripped of their money and feeling betrayed, I mean, it's totally understandable and, like, crazy as well in the US. So that definitely comes to the head for us. All right, so that's our movie, how it all kind of finishes up.
All right.
And we get a couple of these statistics on how much money had been lost. Super, like, I think about $5 trillion had been lost.
That much?
Yeah, like, gone.
That is insane. Okay.
Yeah, you'd think there would be better policies in place.
Yeah.
Or regulation.
Well, this is probably why we have a lot of strict ones now.
Yes, definitely for Australia, there's a lot more strict regulation. But no, it was very interesting. I was pretty enticed after watching that, and I thought to myself, oh, I wonder how Australia kind of responded. So our Australian economy was actually really smart.
Okay.
Our Prime Minister, our Treasurer, they were very much on the ball about what was happening. As I had mentioned before, the Lehman Brothers bank that had actually they had defaulted and actually had claimed bankruptcy. So they like full on got diminished and everything.
Wow.
Kind of after that point was a bit of a, oh no, we actually need to do something. So from the Australian perspective, obviously we were not hit as badly, but after the fall, our government was quite quick to act. So on October 7th, the RBA had actually cut the rate by 100 basis points.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was a very big change. And then by the 12th of October, it was apparent the Australian economy needed to be cushioned because when you're obviously in conversation with American companies, even Europe got hit as well. Yeah. Like, that was insane to even know that. And obviously with foreign exchange and our imports and exports, we obviously had to kind of be careful of what we were doing and how much money we were actually giving away. So by the 12th of October, the Australian government had actually announced it would guarantee all Australian bank deposits and for a fee the wholesale funding of Australia's banks. This apparently had never been done at all in Australia.
I have never heard about this.
Nor had I. All these policies started to become into place. There was a lot more regulation. But yes, so our Australian economy did somewhat survive. We weren't hit as badly during the global financial crisis. So I think it's definitely a telling tale of how we've responded.
Which was probably a really good thing because obviously there's a lot of like controversy on the current responses post-COVID-19 now and with inflation and everything. But I feel like, even though I don't really know much about the 2008 global financial crisis, hearing this and obviously you explaining it and breaking it down a lot more for someone who's not from a financial degree, this stuff just makes it a lot clearer and a lot easier to comprehend, especially with something that's so like, I guess more so for our time, was so insane. But now I feel like for the future generations, they're not so much as inclined to understand these kind of things than the policies that came across from it.
Yeah. No, and that's totally fair. I mean, it's definitely, as financial students, it's a topic of conversation that's always been a big thing and a big part of history for us. Because, like, a lot of things really did go wrong, which is important as well. But yeah, so it's really interesting to have someone kind of actually portray finance in sort of this fun, informative way, but also like just really heartbreaking and very real way as well. Because I mean, you really understand how like everyone was kind of feeling, or even the sense of those period in 2007 where obviously rates weren't actually going down when they thought they would.
Yeah.
And they had obviously all invested this money and people were asking for more money. A lot of the banks and everything were asking for more money on their premiums because stuff wasn't changing and stuff wasn't shifting until obviously the fall in 2008 when everything kind of really came crashing down and it all just went kaput.
Yeah, it really did, and really quickly too from there.
Yeah, it really did. Well, that's the podcast for you. We hope you learnt something new. Please go watch this movie. It's amazing. It is Oscar nominated by Adam McKay. He's definitely one of my favorite directors. He also did a good movie called Don't Look Up on Netflix. But yeah, so thank you for listening to the podcast.
Yes, thank you, and we'll catch you in the next one.